Now I'm noticing while I share screen, I won't be able to see the chat. Georgina Gina, will you be watching the chat? Is that part of your function? Thank you for being here, by the way. Gina, did you hear me?
Yes, I can check.
Okay. Will you be watching the chat? I don't seem to see it while I'm sharing the screen. Oh, there we go. Oh, I don't know how this is working. Well, let me know if a message comes up on the chat, okay?
Okay. Or the people can open the microphone. It's okay?
Okay. Very good. Oh, hi, Vera. Hi. Good to see you. Oh, and Elena, so good to see you. We've had a fun month, the last month, studying 4 powers and 4 steps. So now we're ready to get to work on course 1. Shall we start? Let's see, what time is it? Oh, it's a little after 8. Okay, let's start. And I am so excited. It's incredible to see you all together here. Thank you for wanting to study and help the world be happy and free from suffering. And so the first question we have to ask ourselves is, why are we here? Why would you be interested in studying, the very first class of 18 ACI courses? And I know when I say 18 courses, you might just want to hang up and go away. So I'm glad to see nobody hung up. So I came to this course many years ago in 2002. I was living in the middle of nowhere on a very long dirt road, and I heard from a friend that some Buddhists were just down the dirt road doing a silent 3-year retreat. And my reaction was, what? 3 years of silence? And what's a Buddhist anyway? So they were living in yak fur yurts from Mongolia, while I was living in a purple yurt from Pacific Yurts. It was a very fancy modern yurt. And I thought, this might be interesting. So I arrived at their middle of nowhere part of the road, and surprise of surprises, there must have been 150 people from around the world waiting to carpool further into the middle of nowhere to listen to this guy come out from silence twice a year to teach. And the topic that was being taught that Easter weekend blew my mind. He was teaching the art of how to give away the energy of good deeds I do in my prayers and meditations for the benefit of those in need, rather than keeping the results of those good deeds for my own good life. I should practice giving it away. And I thought that was a totally wild idea. And it was so attractive to me. My heart literally jumped through the sky hearing these ideas. So over the weekend, we went through all of chapter 10 from Master Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. It was written in the 8th century, and he listed all the kinds of people in need who could benefit from me giving this energy to them. And they were teaching me to bring to mind with great detail all the different kinds of suffering people. And in Buddhism, the word people also includes animals and insects. So I was to bring to mind all the people who were in danger, for example, when they were traveling across the ocean, or the dangers of women giving birth, or to the hungry and the blind, the poor, and on and on. So I want to share my entrepreneurial business in this life has always been targeted to help the very poor around the world. But the depth of widespread suffering like this was never talked about in my culture or even cared about. And the constant quiet feeling that I was powerless to help more than just a few of the suffering ones always lived in my heart with quiet despair. And now, sitting in front of me, also living in yurts in my beloved desert homelands, here was someone talking about ideas from thousands of years ago, saying I could help all the suffering of all the kinds of beings. And to even stop the suffering of people in other worlds, which never crossed my mind before either. What? So to think there might be something I could do to relieve overwhelming suffering. And by the way, this includes death itself, okay? This was such a relief to me. So at that moment, a bakchak opened in my heart, a seed. And we'll talk about that later. And my whole life changed. These were in the days without widely used internet. And there was no Zoom. So I traveled that very next weekend from Arizona all the way up to Lake Tahoe, California, where I heard another teacher would be teaching an ACI review course. and where I could get a big dose of more of these wild ideas. I then returned to that retreat center, which was called Diamond Mountain West, every weekend with my two sons, camping in the back of my pickup truck. And we volunteered serving that retreat by washing dishes and hauling firewood and delivering food for the rest of that 3-year retreat. I continued going to live teachings across the country and studied every day by correspondence, getting through the 18 foundation courses. And then when the retreat was over in 2003, I gave my $1 million a year company away. I sold my beautiful property in a forest on a river in the desert and came to help build Diamond Mountain East, which is where we are now. So I have to say to all of us that living this life of leisure and fortune, you know, we all have a roof over our heads. We have food on the table, and we're functioning mentally. This makes it hard, if not outright uncomfortable, knowing and thinking on the fact that we all go to the same place. We all die. Without warning, we can become sick. Our young friends can get terminal cancer, and our parents die. Our own bodies die. And if we don't change something, we all end up dead. So this course really made me think, is there a different way? Is there something different that I could do? Or is it fixed that just we're born, we grow up, maybe something meaningful happens, and then we die? Is that all there is? So in this course, we're going to look like at maybe something different and what that looks like. Is there something we can do to change that? To make life more meaningful? Or can we even change it, you know? Can we interrupt this process of everyone dying? So we have 18 courses. I'm excited to share with you that yes is the answer. And we can get there. We will get there. So in this first class, it's important to know that what we study and why we are studying is referring back to original ancient texts and the teachers who brought this wisdom to us. These are not new ideas, new and improved. So it's good to know the information is authentic. Let's see here if I can change the slide. So the first text we're studying is written by Tsongkhapa in 1403. And it was taught by the Buddha 2,500 years ago. Katerina, are you okay? Okay. And Tsongkhapa's dates are 1357 to 1419. Now, J is a title, and it means Lord in Tibetan. And Song is where he is from. So he is the Lord from Tsongkha, or Tsongkhapa. He is also known by his monk's name, which is Lobsang Drakpa. And Lo means mind. Sang means pure. And Drachma means famous. So his name is the pure-minded one who is well known. What is important to know about Tsongkhapa and the text that we'll be studying is that this is a lineage of teaching. Again, this is not a new and improved model. And if it's 2,500 years old and still around, maybe there is something we can learn, like how to tap into our hearts and serve others to happiness. Maybe we can even see into the inner workings of how the world works by knowing the lineage and knowing that it's unbroken and it's wisdom and compassion from Buddha 2,500 years ago. So here's a statue of Tsongkhapa. And what will happen as you get more practice with this material and move it into your heart, these authors become your friends. Tsongkhapa will become your friend. And when I think about him, I feel so much gratitude for taking his life to share something with me, as do my living teachers, just to help me feel happy. Yeah, maybe to overcome death too. So while preparing for this class, I can say to you that because of their kindness and what they've done to help me grow up, I'm now offering it to you because it's helped me so greatly and literally changed my life. So stepping back a moment, I want to be clear. This is not conversion of spiritual practices, or we're not selling a religion to become a Buddhist, okay? If these ideas are true, if they work, it does not matter about leaving behind your familiar spiritual and cultural traditions, okay? That's not what this is about at all. So in my own life, my family watched me start this training, and I could see it while they were thinking, oh dear, what's she doing now? But after a few years, I noticed they saw a change in me. I am much kinder, more patient, more understanding, less angry, less sad, and more energized. I feel like my mind is more clear, and my capacity to care for people has deeply increased. So I want to say the test of your successful spiritual family, or your successful spiritual practice, is with your family. after you've been studying for a while, go home, share a dinner, and see how fast your irritation grows, regardless of all the other goals. Okay, very big goals. Just to take care of your mom, to see her be relaxed and not irritated at me, with me rolling my eyes. Those things don't happen anymore. And what's in these texts has made life for me and my family more joyful, more exciting, and more meaningful. On the other side, when bad stuff does happen, it's not as bad. Yes, bad stuff still will happen, but this material teaches us how to confront our own suffering. And we understand how that suffering happened in the first place. Very interesting. And then what do you do when your friend dies, for example, or when you get cancer? How do you react and move forward? So through all these teachings and classes, you will become a different person if you practice. Now, what these texts ultimately point to is your potential. Woo! Who can you become? And here's the big sales pitch. If you can understand renunciation, bodhicitta, which is the wish to help all beings to achieve enlightenment, with correct view, and when you know where the world comes from, you can become that being with so much, with so much love in your heart for all beings, with so much compassion in your heart that you actually do have that capacity to serve them all. And that's a big statement. So I'll pause a little more for the translators so you can think about it. You can become that being capable of helping all beings. And this is only because of your love for them, for every creature. You become filled with so much love that when you go on a hike at Diamond Mountain or some other beautiful place, you actually are not even interested to look at the view, but you're looking at your feet to make sure you're not stepping on any ants. Sure, you enjoy the view, but your focus turns to caring for all living beings and even the tiniest ants. Or when you're driving your car slowly at night and those moths fly into the lights and kill themselves, they don't understand that the light they're looking at will actually kill them. So hold on to this idea for a second. They're attracted to a light that will kill them. And think of how you can care for those beings. If you could become this being with great love for all these creatures, I think I should have changed the slide. And then you develop the capacity to help all of them. Wouldn't that be so cool? This is exactly what the texts point us to and what they're going to teach us to do. And that's my sales pitch for the class. We've got to think, maybe since these texts have been around for so long, maybe two, some of those people that we're going to learn about achieved some of those goals already. How cool is that? Now, Jetson Kappa's love was so big that he wrote 10,000 pages of commentary on the Buddha's teachings, just so we could have it today. Without computers, without searchable databases like we have with the Asian Legacy Library, he memorized scriptures, studied them, meditated on them, taught them. And as you get deeper into these teachings, from the beginning through the 36 courses, I know I said there were 18, but there are actually 36. You're going to find your good friend Jetson Kappa in all 36 of those courses. So the book we're studying is called The Three Principal Paths. And the title here is shown also in Tibetan script. And throughout this course, we'll be throwing out little words in Tibetan that will also become your friends. You may think, I'll never learn Tibetan. But one day, something magical will happen, and you'll start reading it simply because of your kindness. You're going to learn, your capacity will improve in every direction because of your kindness. So there are 4 words here. Lam, So, Nam, Sum. And it's written with Tibetan script on the top. And below are the transliteration in Roman letters. And not all those letters are pronounced, but each of those letters and the combination of those letters represents the Tibetan script on a keyboard. And we'll learn all about that later. So what does Lam mean? Lam means path. So means principle. Nam means aspect. And Sum means 3. So we would say path, principle, aspect, 3. And we translate this as the 3 principal paths. Now, what do we mean by path? Is it like steps that we walk on, a trail? Well, we'll go into that later too, but it refers specifically to realizations in our own mind. So these are realizations, different realizations that we make in our own mind and hearts. And there are 3 specific ideas, important ideas, that when you understand all of them, you will understand the entire Buddhist path from beginning to end. The book that we're studying is only 14 verses of a poem, and it includes everything that are included in the hundreds of thousands of pages of scripture. The good news is that all these hundreds of thousands of pages of scriptures are talking about the same 3 ideas over and over in different ways, so the different minds can understand and practice. And so we can get off our lazy, or I'll say my lazy you know what, and do what they're teaching us to do. Because what we're trying to do is difficult. We're trying to change our mind and our hearts to flip everything around that we see. Because here's a claim that we're going to look at as we go through these courses. Perhaps we've been doing everything backwards, incorrectly, because it all ends up in death. So it's just an incorrect way of seeing, we can say. Maybe it's an incorrect way of loving. And that's what creates all the suffering that we see around us. But because our ways become habits, they're deeply ingrained in our minds, and we might need, more and more presentations of these three principal ideas for us to flip the ideas around in our own heart. So we're going to give a lot of blah, 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 a lot of words. And we're going to analyze the 14 verses and then learn to put them into practice. Because it's important to save, time. We're not just here to learn. People are dying around us. So we better act fast. So how do we take these ideas and make them real right now? And if they're not real now, forget it. It's not worth our time we do in class. If you cannot apply what we learn to the world you see outside of you, to your friends, to your families, the beautiful views, what's in your heart or mind, you won't stick around because, again, it's a waste of time. So we're going to teach you ways to apply these ideas right now, because you or I could be dead in a week or in an hour. Now, also, this will address a yearning that we have inside of us that drives us to the deeper questions, like, what do you want out of life that you want to explore? Do you just want to live on the surface of life, or do you want to dive in and do things meaningful? So that's the other big point of studying these classes. Now, I'm noticing the translation goes by slowly, so I'm going to skip a few things. But I want to say how comforting it's been to me over these 21 years of studying that these materials have been around for 2,500 years and passed from generation to generation correctly and carefully to preserve the accuracy of this proven recipe for happiness. Okay, let's see now. How did these verses show up? Which is question 3 on the homework. This book, the 14 verses, is a dear letter that was written to Tsongkhapa's student, whose name was Nawang Drakpa. Now, Nawang Drakpa was one of many of Tsongkhapa's students, and the verses were written as an affectionate letter to the student, as a nice summary of all of Buddhism in 2 pages. Nawang Drakpa had asked for this short verse for the country people who he was teaching, as he built over 100 monasteries at his teacher's request. Nawang Drakpa also has a nickname, Sako Wonpo. Sako is the area that he came from, like Kansas or Russia. And Wonpo is a friendly word for a local priest. So his nickname is the local priest from Tsako. Briefly, what are the three principal paths? They are the study of three great realizations or attitudes that are needed by every practitioner of Buddhism, or I would say every practitioner of love and kindness. The three are renunciation, which is different from what we think it is. It's not about giving up fancy cars or nice homes or money. What's going to happen to you when you practice seeds, understanding how reality comes, you will be forced to enjoy all of this abundance because you'll know how the world works. Renunciation is being fed up. I'm sick and tired of seeing all my friends die. I'm sick and tired of seeing poverty and wars and, hatred. I've had it. Okay. So the first step on this path is that feeling of, I'm going to do whatever it takes to change how I see the world. The second one is the wish for enlightenment, which is a logical next step. And this is, I want with all my heart to become a Buddha myself, so I can help every living being in all the universes get out of this suffering. I'm sick of the suffering, and I want to be the way to change it. I want to take personal responsibility to remove all the suffering I see. So that's the wish for enlightenment. And the third principal path is having a correct view of how the world works, of seeing that there is no person and no object and no situation out there which does not come from the seeds in my own mind. Now, we have some new students with us who I don't think have been in any Buddhist classes. So Xavier and Miracle, Madison, I'd love to have a meeting with you maybe next week or this week sometime and talk about a few basic descriptions on the topic of seeds, okay? So let's see if we can get together and have that little talk. Okay, now the next slide. This course also contains the complete text of a commentary written on this short poem called The Key That Unlocks the Door to the Noble Path by Pabonka Rinpoche. And his dates are 1878 to 1941. And he was probably the most famous teacher of the Tsongkhapa tradition during that 100-year period. He taught all the locals, all the people, not just the monastics, and he was very popular. He has a nickname in the Diamond Way teachings where we don't call him Pabonka Rinpoche, we call him Dechen Yingpo. And his dates again are 1878 to 1941. And his nickname, his other name is Dechen Yingpo. Now, Pabong means boulder, like a big rock. And it was a special retreat center out of Saramay and Sarajay in India, like Diamond Mountain. And that retreat center was called Pabong. So he was called Pabonka. And they decided he would be the incarnation of the abbot of Pabong, but he wasn't. So what's the story there? He's actually recognized as the reincarnation of Chankya Rolpe Dorje, who was a very famous Lama of the Emperor of China. In the year that Pabonka was born, however, there was a lot of political tension, and people were afraid to call him Chankya, his real name. So they called him Pabonka. And Chankya's previous dates were 1717 to 1786. Now, Pabonka Rinpoche had a special student named Trijang Rinpoche, whose dates are 1901 to 1981. And I love this picture of him. I had visited Trijang's stupa in Dharamsala some time ago, and I felt a very sweet connection with him. He was a high Lama and became the highest geshe of his time. And as his picture shows, he was an amazing, kind person. You can really see it in his face. He was an amazing scholar, an amazing teacher, and he is why we have the book, A Gift of Liberation, thrust into the palms of your hands. It's something that we've been studying for 10 years amongst our established group. But he spent 12 years editing Pabonka Rinpoche's talks on the Lam Rim. After he himself took dictation, he wrote down the teachings while Pabonka was teaching. And these were in the days before iPhone recorders. And, you know, people were taking notes like crazy. Other people were so realized that they could memorize the text as they were being taught. But anyway, we're told this is the greatest book ever written in Tibetan. And it was edited by Trijang, who was my teacher's root Lama. So you are Trijang Rinpoche's great grandkids. Okay? It's a good lineage that you're in. By the way, I have to say you have been cursed now, Xavier and Madison, that once you start to hear about these teachings, it's important to keep the tradition passed on to the next generation. So as you are students, keep in mind you are also teachers. Okay, now Trijang was the root teacher of Ken Rinpoche, Geshe Lobsang Tarchen, whose dates were 1921 to 2004. And he wrote the introduction to the text that we are studying. As a youth, he was a goofball in the monastery. And goofball means he was a bad boy. He never studied, and he just played tricks on his fellow students. So that's why he got stuck with kitchen duty. Or it's called Nirpa. Nirpa means you have to make refreshments for the thousands of monks who are in your class. Now, while he was in the kitchen one day, Pabonka visited the kitchen to check on the refreshments. And when he saw Ken Rinpoche, he walked over to him, he puts his hands on his head, and he says, "This one is special." He said it twice. "This one is special." And then he just turned around and left. And then something really weird happened. Ken Rinpoche got some kind of a transmission from Pabonka, and he changed totally. He said, "I want to be a Geshe, a number one Geshe." And he studied really hard, and he did become number one Geshe out of 20,000 monks in the debates. Yeah, we think of our old universities, by the way, like Princeton and Harvard and Yale, as big ancient institutions. The Tibetan monasteries or the Eastern China monasteries go back way further and were much larger. He was in a class of 20,000. So now, after Geshe Michael's 3-year retreat, the one in 2003, Geshe Michael told me to go study Lam Rim with Ken Rinpoche at the Rashi Ling Temple in Howell, New Jersey, where I also received my first sets of vows and the introduction to Vajrayana. The courses were every weekend, and I had to travel from Arizona to New Jersey, the other side of North America, leaving behind my 2 children, my own business, my 4 horses, my 9 dogs, and etc. So I called Ken Rinpoche and I asked, I'm kind of busy. What can I do about this heavy travel schedule? And I was kind of hoping he'd say, well, just come every other weekend. But he didn't say that. His reply literally was, "Eat well and get plenty of rest. Ha, 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 click." Eat well, get plenty of rest. Ha, 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 click. So he did not give me an out to skip classes, and I had to go every weekend to study with him. Now the temple, oh my God, I feel so blessed to have experienced his teachings. Oh, do you want, oh no, you don't need this one. To have experienced his teachings in the traditional temple in Howell. It was in a suburban neighborhood in New Jersey, and I always felt as though I had gone through a wormhole into other galaxies and times. Quite magical. So thank you, Geshe Michael, for sending me there. Now, Ken Rinpoche's student is my teacher, Geshe Michael Roach, and he was born in 1952 and was the first Westerner to go through the 25-year Tibetan Buddhist monastic program. While studying this rigorous philosophy coursework in Tibetan. So the picture on the left is on his graduation day with Geshe Lothar in India when he graduated. Now, after he graduated, he was told by His Holiness the Dalai Lama to go serve Ken Rinpoche in the Rashi Ling Temple and to study with Ken Rinpoche. And Ken Rinpoche's first assignment was, he said, "You are the first Westerner to go through this monastic course. You have one more assignment. Go into the business world and secretly apply the Buddhist principles you have learned. See how it goes." He probably laughed at the end of that too. So Geshe Michael helped to start a diamond company in New York City. And it became the fastest growing business in New York using these Buddhist principles. Geshe Michael wrote a book, a top-selling book, by the way, about the experience called The Diamond Cutter, The Buddha on Strategies for Managing Your Business and Your Life. And Warren Buffett bought the $250 million a year company in 1995. So Geshe Michael, since then, has started numerous nonprofits that focus on preserving, translating, and teaching these ancient books to both secular and non-secular audiences around the world. Okay, we're ready to start the text. Okay, just checking the time. The text doesn't jump right in to the three principal paths. It starts with some preliminary material, which is traditional. And one of them, perhaps the most traditional thing to say first, is as you listen to this teaching, avoid the three problems of the pot. And this idea has been presented as long ago as the Tang Dynasty in the 700s. So 1,300 years ago, they were talking about this idea called the three problems of the pot. So the first problem of the pot, before the teaching starts, take the lid off and pay attention. I'm going to learn something new. It's not what I'm used to, but I'm open to it. I'm not falling asleep in class. Secondly, don't be a dirty pot, which is don't have wrong intentions for being in the class. For example, just because all your friends are doing it, that's not a good intention. Or maybe there's a cute guy in the class. That's not a good intention. The second part of the dirty pot is to don't mix what you learn with other systems, like maybe shamans and ayahuasca, you know. Those are other spiritual systems. But when you follow these teachings correctly, you're already going to see the whole universe in your meditation. And you can meet every living creature of infinite numbers. And we're not told to exclude other systems because they are wrong. We're just wanting to keep this recipe intact and pure as it's presented, because it works how it's presented. So the teachers say, don't mess with a good chocolate cake recipe. The third pot is don't be a leaky pot with a hole in the bottom. And this means that the teacher teaches and teaches and teaches, and everything that's been poured into the pot leaks out. And I ask you a question the next day and you're saying, huh? And this happens in class. I know. 10 minutes after hearing something, the teacher will say, so what was this? And nobody knows. So these are three important reminders before a class starts. So all the Lam Rim texts have three great divisions. All the teachings from A to Z are divided into three different groups. They all teach how to get to Buddhahood, but they depend on the motivation of the person in the class, okay? So there's 3 different kinds of motivations that all the teachings have been divided into. All the people have been divided into based on the motivation. So they're called lower scope people, middle scope people, and biggest scope people. And these categories are just a difference of motivation, referring to your heart. So the first cup of coffee that we see here, the one on the left, represents the motive of avoiding a lower birth. This is the lower scope. And it's a high scope, so don't think, you know, if this is your motive, you're a lower person. That's not the case. It just means my motivation is I do not want to be reborn as an animal in a hell realm or as a spirit. I do not want to go through the lower births. I want to be reborn as a human. So there's a certain way to teach that person with that motive, okay? Now, any person who understands the pen correctly cannot go to a lower birth. And Madison and Xavier, we're going to talk about that next week or this week. But by understanding the pen correctly, you destroy all the seeds in your heart that would send you there to a lower birth. So this is a good place to start. Now, we add a little cream to the middle cup of coffee, and we ask, what's medium scope person's motivation? And they don't want any kind of suffering. I don't want any kind of samsara. I don't want any suffering in my life. I don't want mental afflictions. I don't want to be angry. I don't want to be jealous. I don't care if I'm president or if I'm a garbage man. All of it sucks equally, and I just don't want any part of it. I want to reach a state called nirvana, which is an absence of all negative emotions. Pretty darn cool, right? But they're middle because it's just for me. I'm just thinking about me achieving happiness and freedom. So this gives us a hint about the biggest scope people's intentions. The biggest scope person wants everyone to be happy and free from suffering, okay? They are the bodhisattvas. They are the enlightened Buddhas, because we have to become Buddhas to help all the beings. So for this group of people, with that motive, that intention to help all beings, we must teach them the ways to become a Buddha. Okay. Now, we've got 5 minutes. Okay, we talked a little bit about, I'm going to go fast here. We talked about the classical meaning of renunciation is not what we want for you to do, okay? Because if you practice this seed system, you will be successful. You will not be living in a simple life. You will be full of prosperity and everything you need to help all beings, okay? And it's interesting to look at how many of the great saints of Buddhism were princes. They were royalty. There was Master Shantideva, a Sangha, Siddhartha, Atisha, right? So practicing this system is going to force abundance on you. So I'm sorry about that. You'll just have to take it. Remember, renunciation just means we are tired of the suffering. That's all. And on your homework, when they ask what is renunciation, you can just say, I'm tired of it. The second principal path is called bodhicitta. And it does not mean Buddha mind, which some people say it does. It means the wish to become enlightened. I must become enlightened so I can split my body into billions of pieces, go to countless planets, and help all the people who are suffering. I am so in love with all the beings, I must help them, okay? And I must be a Buddha. That's the only way I can help them. So that's the logical next step to being fed up. What am I going to do about it? I'm going to be a Buddha so I can go help them. And the third principal path is if you want to become a Buddha to help all beings, you can be a person who does that because you have learned how the world works with seeds. You will become as a gardener. You will know what actions to plant through your kindness and love with other people because you have the wisdom to know how seeds work, and you will see something called emptiness directly. So this third principal path is really about seeing emptiness directly. And that's a big topic, and we'll talk about it over the next 18 courses. Okay, so this is what all the Buddhist practice is about. We have a meditation assignment included in your homework, 15 minutes a day. Oh, Katerina, I think you have to go to work. I don't want you to be late. 15 minutes a day, do an analytical meditation on what renunciation means to you. And be sure, please, to write the dates and times that you meditated so that your homework will be accepted. And again, Xavier and Madison, let's talk during the week a little bit about some basic meditation aids that will help you start your meditation practice well. Okay, you guys, let's use our Telegram group to pose questions, to keep in touch. Thank you, all the translators. Thank you, all the tech people. Thank you, my friends, for coming. And let's get on with the day. I can't believe we did that whole course in an hour. We can do it. I love you.
There is a question. There is some meditation, guide meditation of the renunciation.
What was the question? Let me see here. Maybe I can get out of this share. Stop share. And then more chat. Oh, there it is. There's chat. Okay. Oh, what was the question?
The question is there is guide meditation for the renunciation?
There's not a guided meditation that I'm aware of, but I will look, okay? So I think until I find a guided meditation, analyze the suffering that you see in your world and generate a feeling of how painful it is, and generate this intention that you have got to stop it. You know, get the feelings going in your mind and your heart. And this will support your studies through the coming years as you become a Buddha. If you start with this first step of building the feeling of being fed up with suffering, and you will not take it anymore. Okay, Did that answer the question? All right, well, shall we say goodbye? And we'll see you in 2 weeks. I'm so happy to see your beautiful faces. In October, you'll notice the schedule is very small because Geshe Michael's teaching at Diamond Mountain, and I have to work as well as study, so I will not be able to teach. Okay, well, it's hard to say goodbye. Have a good couple weeks. I love you.